What is up? Welcome into the room. Y'all come on in. Come on in. I am so excited about tonight's discussion. Uh, I think it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. You want to make sure that you are inviting any friends and any family members, anybody you know. I mean, mental health. This is going to be a great discussion. I have an absolutely incredible guest tonight that I believe is going to help all of us. Hey, Tanya, let me see when you get in the room. Make sure I know you're here. Good to see you, Tanya. Where are you listening from? Where are you joining in with us from? All over the country. Let me know what city. Let's go ahead and do a little roll call so I can see where everybody's rocking from. We're talking mental health today, and I'm really excited because I think with the year that we've had, that all of us can use a little help with coping through the holiday season, really coping through life. We've had it's been a traumatic year. There's been so much going on. Hey, Linda from Mississippi, what's going on? Sharon, hello, how you doing? Invite people in the room. I promise you, you don't want to miss this discussion. It's going to be powerful. It's going to be awesome. And I'm really, really excited about the doctor, the awesome, powerful woman of God, and all that she's doing for our community and for so many people. Hey, Blair, Michigan, Portsmouth, Ohio in the building, Austin, Texas, Atlanta. Let me know where you joining in for Arkansas, Chicago, Sacramento, California, La Crosse, Wisconsin, Oklahoma City, Portland, Oregon, Lynchburg, Virginia. What's up, y'all? The doctor is already on. I'm getting ready to bring her out in a minute. Hey, what's going on, Purvis? Louisville, Kentucky's in the building. I see you. Lansing, South Carolina, Salem, Virginia. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let me bring in Dr. Chanda. How you doing?
I'm well, bro. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Can you hear me okay?
That's good. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I hear you absolutely. You sound great. Hold on,
Perfect.
let me stop you more. New York, Texas in the building, Augusta, Georgia, Syracuse, New York. What's going on? Listen, this is gonna be an awesome, awesome time. Make sure you tune in. We could all use some help. Like I say, coping during this holiday season. Mental health, we don't talk enough about it. I'm glad to see more of it being discussed. But I believe tonight's gonna be special. Detroit, Michigan, Fruitland, Maryland. I never heard of Fruitland, Maryland. Okay, Fruitland, Maryland. Philly, Pennsylvania, Baltimore, Compton, California. What's up, West Side? Make sure you're sharing, adding people in. Dr. Shonda, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Listen, the people ready for this conversation. We got all the cities in
Yeah,
here.
yeah. All the cities are here, and I'm really excited because I think this is something that's so needed. And of course, I asked a question on my Instagram a few months back. Are you okay?
Mhm.
And so many people are commented. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of people commented about they're not okay. They weren't doing well, whether it was physically, mentally, emotionally, financially. There were so many different areas of their life they were not okay with. And we were, you DM'd me, and you talked about how important it was that we had to have this type of conversation, that we had to have this discussion. And I want to thank you, first of all, for reaching out. Of course, you've been a blessing. What you're doing, what God is doing through your life, and how He's doing it has been nothing short of amazing. And we can only point it back to God. But why do you feel like mental
Absolutely.
health is so important?
Well, mental health been important, but I feel as though right now, considering the past few months that we had, I believe the research says that about 49% of Americans have experienced at least some sort of symptom of anxiety or depression. And that just speaks to the
Mm,
state of our emotions today. Like we're having a hard time with coping with the pandemic, a hard time coping with the grief and loss, a hard time coping with the racial injustice. And I feel as though
yeah.
because we are collectively experiencing all of these different adverse situations, I think it's time for us to collectively heal.
I love that. I love that. And I think, for our community, for our culture, a lot of times we're so great at suppressing and just kind of getting over stuff and just, well, we think we're getting over, but we're really not getting over it. It's still there. And so I've also followed your page now on Instagram, the mental health page you have. Give us that right there. It's
Absolutely. It's called Minds of the Culture.
Minds of the Culture on Instagram. Yeah, so I was just
Yeah.
looking at some posts and just you were talking about how, for our community, a lot of times, we may think, oh, I'm not crazy. I don't need, a therapist. I don't need counseling. I'm not crazy. I'm just fine. I'm just going through, I'm just kind of going through. And so I've discovered that a lot of time that thing that you ignore is the main thing that needs to be healed. We feel like it's
Absolutely.
that, we just kind of ignore it or look over it. We're just going to get through it. But there's no strength in ignoring it. The real strength is being able to deal with it. The real strength is being able to say, what, this is something, and maybe it's not just about something wrong with me, but maybe there was something
Mhm.
wrong that happened to me, and that's what I think, has been so impactful. What you're doing is helping us really kind of look and internalize and say, what, there's nothing wrong with going to therapy, in our community or in our faith, because of course you're a believer, you're a preacher's kid as well. And a lot of time in church, we're taught we just, pray and get through stuff.
Mhm. 100%. And so I love the fact that you were saying like we're basically saying you can't heal what you ignore. And so I always give my clients the example. So, if you were to sprain your leg, would you continue to walk on it? No, because that's
Yeah.
going to continue the pain. That's going to continue the
Yeah.
injury. And so it's the same thing when we try to cover up our traumas, when we try to cover up those emotions that we might be experiencing. If we don't learn how to acknowledge it, there's absolutely no way that we can heal from it. And like you said, like growing up in church, so many times we've heard like, Jesus is my doctor and we can just pray it away. And I'm a firm believer in the power of the healing virtue of Jesus Christ. I'm a firm believer in that. But I
Yeah.
also feel as though Jesus Christ anoints providers, he anoints doctors, he anoints therapists and social workers in order to help to provide those tools and strategies that we need, and even in the body of Christ, in order to manage our emotions.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we're gonna. I see y'all have a lot of questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions in the comments. I will get to some of those, but we're talking about. We want to talk about tonight specifically. Coping during this holiday season. That this is a
Yeah.
difficult time. It's already been a difficult year, but when it comes to the holiday season, how often do people experience holiday stress, and what contributes to that holiday stress?
Absolutely. So it's actually very common. So a lot of people might experience, the emotions that comes with the holidays, such as joy and just being excited about it. But actually, a research was shown to show 38% of individuals actually endorse accompanying holiday stress with the joy and all those other factors that we experience. And when talking
Mm,
about holiday stress, there are so many different things that can contribute to it. And just to name a
yeah,
few, we're talking about like finances, like financial
yeah,
strain, not being able to give to
mm,
people like you really want to.
yeah,
We're talking about time restraints and time constrictions. A lot of people feel like they're running out of time and they can't really prepare for the holiday. And then
mm,
factoring on top of that, like we're in a whole pandemic right now. So of course the
yeah.
holiday is going to look a lot different than it has in previous years. So I think it's so important for us to understand what is contributing to this so that we can know how to combat it and overcome holiday stress.
I love it. I love it. And how do you? This is the thing I was thinking about. How do you really know when you're at a place of like, what? I may be dealing with depression. I may be having this the stress of that. Because is there a difference between being concerned about something and really worrying and being stressed out about it to the point to where you really need to kind of examine
Yeah, so anytime our bodies so first of all, stress is healthy. Like some level of stress is always going to be healthy for us. If we didn't stress
it?
about things, sometimes we just wouldn't get things done. So like I stress about getting reports done for work. If I didn't stress about it, then I would just hold it off, right? But when we
Mm,
know that stress is becoming a concern, that's when we'll notice changes in our bodies, like our eating might change. We might start to
mm,
gain or lose weight at rates that we usually don't. We might start to experience exhaustion or fatigue or being
mm,
excessively tired or not
yeah,
being able to sleep at all. Sometimes people might excessively drink in order to cope. So when we're
mm,
experiencing and we're dealing with those different symptoms, that's when it's time for us to kind of like tune into what we're experiencing and to understand like what is contributing to this. And a lot of times for us, like we don't recognize it in ourselves. It might be a family member that's pointing it out to you, like, "Hey, sis, you've been a little tired lately. What's
yeah.
going on?" So it's really important to pay attention to those telltale signs as well.
Okay. Now let me ask you this, so because you can help us all right here. How do we cope with this holiday stress? How do we cope with it?
Yeah, so I would say number one, we definitely want to get to a point where we can recognize it. So again, that goes back to the statement of acknowledging, like, okay, am I feeling these changes in my body? Has my sleep pattern changed?
Yeah.
Am I stressed out about these time constraints and all those other contributing factors that we talked about? Also,
Yeah.
it'll be important for us to manage our own expectations. So a lot of times we don't
Yeah. That's
realize how
good.
like Yeah, like a lot of times we don't realize how holiday stress can come from us just putting stressors on ourselves and us putting
Yeah.
time restraints and things that are just really unreasonable on ourselves and expecting us to be able to make it to every holiday function or to bake cookies for everybody in the neighborhood or being able to give gifts or go beyond your budget in order to purchase things. Like those are unnecessary stressors. So if it's not
Yeah.
necessary, I would strongly encourage you to reduce that. And I would also
Yeah.
just encourage you to utilize those people around you. People, of course, we're people of faith. And, of my community and your community, we're individuals of the African diaspora. So that means that we are
Mm.
collectivistic by nature. So relying on
Wait,
our
hold on. Go
community
back.
is,
Hold on. Go back to that again. Wait. Hold on. That was good. Go back. You
I
can't just run
got you.
that. What you say? We're what by nature? We're
We are collectivistic by nature. You can take that
collectivistic.
one.
My God. Somebody
You can
put
take that one.
collectivistic in the comments. Collectivistic. My God. I gotta look that up.
You were so
Thank
silly.
you. So go
But
back to that
yeah.
statement. So we're collectivistic.
hmm So we're collectivistic. That means that we're interdependent, like we rely on each other. We're a
Mm,
communal type of people. So because we are
yeah.
communal, that's also how we can find our healing. So we can find our stress reduction in relying on our community, reaching out to people when we feel lonely, reaching out to people when we do feel stressed out, reaching out to people to help us meet those deadlines, like utilizing our resources so that we can start to experience that symptom reduction.
Yeah, and I love what you say because I agree. One of the things that do help with coping with stress is being around loved ones. And with us being in
hmm
COVID-19, we haven't been able to do that. Thanksgiving was canceled for my family. Christmas, so a lot of us we're not coming together. As we have every other year during this holiday season. So being separated, being isolated, or whatever, with us not having that, what's some things we can maybe do to help replace that? Being able to be around. Is it like the Zooms and the FaceTime and things like that?
Absolutely. That's such a great question because, that's one thing that a lot of us are going to be facing this year. So in order for us to be able to meet that communal desire, it'll be important for us to find creative ways in order to meet with those that are in our networks. So thinking about, like
Mm,
you said, those Zoom meetings. So I'll use myself as an example. So during Thanksgiving, that's the time where people, we want to be around our family. We want to play those games. And I knew because
yeah.
we were going through a pandemic that people just didn't have access to that. So I decided to have a virtual Friendsgiving, right? Where I just
Yeah.
invited people via Zoom link to play games, play trivia, do those different things and have a legitimate discussion to provide that communal
Yeah.
sense virtually. So that's one example of
Yeah.
something you can do. There are also different games that you can play with your friends virtually. You can get on FaceTime with your friends. Even my family during the holidays, so the Reynolds had a whole like little Zoom session. So it's up to you. You just have to be
Yeah.
creative and create those virtual spaces.
Yeah. Now, another thing that adds to holiday stress is being uncuffed during cuffing season. So, the whole thing is it's supposed to be cuffing season. But when you're single, a lot of times, other than this year, you can go out and hang out with friends, do other things to keep yourself kind of busy because you don't have that man or that woman at home. What's some ways to handle being single, dealing with that stress of being uncuffed during cuffing season and not being able to go out and hang out with your friends and kind of take your mind off of it?
Yeah. So one of the things that we can do is to really look at the ways in which we can again rely on our community. So looking at ways that we can focus on. So it looks like I dropped my connection. Am I back?
Yes, you're back, and I'm back too. I don't know what happened. Yeah, it froze for a minute, but
Yeah.
I'm back.
Okay. No, you're good. All right. So again, that goes back to the statement of relying on our community, right? And so,
Mhm.
you might find that having those supportive phone calls with people who are in your family, even reaching out to people who are in your network at church. I know we both have like a faith-based audience, but research
Yeah,
suggests that when you're a part of those small groups in a church, like you're less likely to feel depressed, you're less likely to feel anxious.
mm,
And that's because again, like we're again like individuals of the African diaspora, like we like that community. So being a
yeah,
part of those smaller groups, use that to your advantage. Reach out to the women's ministry. Reach out to,
yeah,
the children's ministry. Whatever y'all got at your church, reach out to them
yeah.
so that they can support you in those moments.
That's so good. That's so good. And I think, for us, one thing I'll say about my church, shout out to Rock City, Pastor Mike McCourt Jr., is, we have, not only are we having church virtually, but we're also having morning devotions every morning, Monday through Saturday, every morning. And I think that's been really, really helping as groups of ministers and leaders are getting on every morning and discussing the Word of God, because we know at the end of the day, it's the Word that sustains us, the Word of God that keeps us. And a lot of times when we're going through, we do so much negative self-talk, and we're watching CNN way too much, and we're hearing what the world is saying, that we forget that at the end of the day, the flowers fade, the grass withers, but the word of the Lord shall stand forever. And it's the word of the Lord that's what's going to sustain us and allow us to stand during these difficult times. Also, so looking at one thing I wrote down, being their family is more stressful during the holiday season for some people. Some of us come from families where boundaries are persistently crossed. Toxic families, relational patterns, conflictual patterns of communication. Wow. What advice would you give to our friends today when it comes to the toxicity of these family moments?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'll say you are not alone. A lot of times we might think that we have to be around those family members when it does come to the holidays simply because it's a tradition. And that's not the case. Like, I would strongly encourage you to assess your own needs, figure out what is it that you need in the moment, and respect that. Like, if you feel like you need peace in this moment, and you know, like your aunties and uncles, they be arguing and stuff, like that's not going to give you peace in the moment. So I would encourage you to, again, set those boundaries, establish them, and stick to them. It's nobody else's job to stick to our boundaries but our own. People are going to try and push on them all day, but it's up to us to be able to set and abide by them. Because at the end of the day, like, nobody else is going to protect them for us. So, you know, set those boundaries and stick to them. And I will also encourage you, like, if you have specific family members who do give you that sense of relief and, you know, provide you with that sense of peace, be around them. Like, you don't have to be around people who, you know, perpetuate conflictual patterns of relationship and who constantly push your boundaries. And also just know, like, what conversations you're willing to entertain, because I know conversations around the dinner table, if you're choosing to be on the dinner table, that can get messy. So just know, like, what conversations will trigger you. Know your triggers before going in the situation. I'll say that again. So know your triggers before going into the situation, because, you know, that can be a whole nother story.
Yeah, you spoke of something on your page that really blessed me too, about you know, our culture and African Americans, and how the trauma even since slavery is still impacting and affecting us today, and how it actually can. You said somebody even changes the DNA. And so it's generating some of the trauma that we're experiencing is from generation. Can you guys just talk about that?
Yes, 100%. Oh, I love that you're watching my videos.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It blesses me. It blesses me for real.
Yeah. Okay. So you basically explained it. Like, I always say that if we had mental health professionals way back in the day when we were in that enslaved period, a lot of our ancestors would have probably had met the criteria for PTSD, or post-traumatic slave disorder, or post-traumatic stress disorder. Another derivative of that is post-traumatic slave disorder. But going back to that, so trauma, which they may have experienced during the enslavement period, being taken from your homeland, being brought to a country to where, you know, you were expected to work various hours and just treated horribly, like, that type of stuff is embedded into our DNA. And because it's embedded into our DNA, they have research out there related to epigenetics. And that basically suggests that our external stressors changes our DNA. It changes our biological makeup. And what we know about the DNA and our biological makeup is that gets passed on, right? So I didn't come from a vacuum. Like, I came from Eric and Rilla. They're my parents. Therefore, I have their DNA. And so that means that when, you know, when we have individuals who were enslaved, who experienced significant trauma, and who have DNA that was changed due to the trauma, that means that that's going to be passed down from generation to generation. But just like trauma is passed down from generation, so can healing. Again, I'm a firm believer in the power and the healing of Jesus Christ. We just have to be intentional about it.
That's so good. Wait a minute. I need that statement. Our external disorders affect.
Our external stressors impacts our internal DNA and biology.
Ooh, that's somebody better write that down. So what you're saying is that
write it down.
Things that we go through around us, you know, so that's why it's important, like you say, to watch who, you know, like you say, even some family members that we know intentionally add stress to our life, in situations that we allow ourselves to stay in too long. You're saying that actually can change our DNA, which will be passed on to our children. So they'll be fighting battles because it was something that we were afraid to get released from or get free from. and so that's passed on to them to the next generation. That's so good. The external stressors,
Yeah, if it's traumatic,
external
yes,
stressors.
absolutely.
Woo, that's good, y'all. That blessed me right
I'm
there.
gonna write it down for
Listen,
you, send it to you, bro.
yeah, and I think that leads me here. That leads me here, sis, is that a lot of times we go through trauma and traumatic experiences that may not have been our fault. Like you say, maybe it was passed down, maybe it was something someone else did to us. But I always tell people that the trauma may not have been your fault, but the healing is your responsibility. Because I believe a lot of people feel like because it wasn't my fault, what happened to me, it's somebody else's job to heal me. It's somebody else's job to fix me. When if you really be honest, even if the trauma wasn't your fault, the healing is still your responsibility. Oh, did we lose her? Uh-oh.
There
Oh,
we
there you
go.
go. Oh yeah.
All right.
Could you hear me?
I didn't hear the last part.
Okay, okay. So basically, what I was saying, a lot of times when it's passed down trauma, we feel like it's somebody else's responsibility. And I always share with people that the trauma may not have been your fault, but the healing is your responsibility. That we're always waiting for the person that broke us to fix us, or we're, well, this is just how, it's how my dad was, how my mom was. How important is it for people to be able to really look in the mirror and say, listen, it's my job to make sure that I get healed. It's my mental health is my responsibility.
Yeah. So, I mean, even going back to what Jesus said, what did he say? Take up your bed and walk. Like, if the
Yeah.
man decided to stay there and not do anything for his healing, he would have been in that same situation, I believe,
Same situation.
for even longer. And yeah,
Yeah.
so it's so important for us to even adhere to the words of Jesus Christ. Like he told us,
Mm,
he was the perfect example that if we want to be healed, if we want to be set free, if we want to be delivered, then we have to do something. Healing is active, deliverance is active. We can't just sit complacent and expect things to happen for us. It just doesn't work that way.
mm. Yes, yes. I love it. I love that because, a lot of us feel like, it's just going to fix itself. And I love how you said Jesus, he gave the man a command. He said, listen, you can either sit there or you can listen to my voice, be obedient and walk. So we have a responsibility to do something and that's why I believe you can have Jesus and a therapist. And like there's nothing wrong with going to therapy. There's
100.
nothing wrong with getting help from a licensed professional like yourself, Dr. Chanda. What's something else you see our culture wrestle with when it comes to mental health? Is something else that you see either in your DMs, just working with people that you think is important for us to know regarding our mental health and the importance of it? Because we do have
Yeah.
spiritual health. We talk a lot bit about our physical health, but what about our mental health?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's not even specific to the Black church, but it's more so just Black people in general. Like we have this notion of having to be that strong Black man or the strong Black
Mm,
woman. And we don't
yeah.
understand how detrimental that has been to our community because it perpetuates the idea that, I have to be strong in all situations. Therefore, I can't
Mm,
express emotions. I have to hold it
yeah.
in. Be a man. Like, why are you crying? Right? Like
Yeah.
you're a Black woman. You have to be strong all the time. And we don't
Yeah.
understand how that specific emotion has caused so many people to inhibit emotions, to keep them
Mm,
internalized and to not deal with them. And what we know about emotions, and when you don't deal with them and you try to keep them at bay or at the surface level, they're going to erupt somehow, some way. Whether it's that
yeah.
one situation that ticks you off with your supervisor or something that a family member said, one way or another, them emotions are going to come out. That's why we have to put to death those different scenarios we have of being like always having to be strong. Like that's not the case. We don't have to do that. There's literally
Yeah.
times in the Bible where the Bible talks about Jesus expressing emotions, like
Yeah.
Jesus crying, Jesus having moments where
Absolutely.
he expressed himself. And so we have to really adhere to the fact that because I am human, I'm going to have emotions, and that is okay. Like that's what makes me human. That's the beauty of of being a human being. And so really understanding that and just really just for pursuing that, I think is going to be so important to us and our liberation.
I love that, and you made me think about how even as men, we're gender trained basically to not show emotion and to always
Yeah.
show strength. But when you talk about the Bible, God doesn't say that my strength. He says my strength is made perfect in your weakness. Many times we want to come to God in our strength, and that's not. See, the whole suck it up and get over it. I think that's impacted us so much because a lot of people feel like I believe our God gave us our emotions for a reason.
Absolutely.
and to be indicators, not dictators. They shouldn't dictate, but they should be indicators. And
Mhm.
I think by diminishing our emotions in an effort to avoid looking weak, it doesn't produce strength, but it really produces dysfunction. It really produces, being addicts and abusive, and so much because we suppress so much for so many years. We never get out. We never talk about it. We never really talk about things that we go through. And I think that's so powerful. What you were saying. Listen, in our culture, it's this whole always show strength, never show weakness. Life is a competition. And I think that's so good for us to hear you say that as well. No, that's not strength. The real strength is being able to deal with the trauma that you've been through in your life.
Exactly, exactly. And it's so important for us to realize that. Otherwise, we're going to stay in the same cycles.
Yeah, cycle. And like you said, we're passing it on from generation to
Yeah.
generation, because we decide not to be healed.
Hmm.
Trauma. How a lot of people look at
And
traumatic experience.
can I can I go back real quick? I'm sorry. So
Yeah,
something just
yeah,
popped into my
absolutely.
head. Yeah. So
Absolutely. Please. Let's do
okay.
it.
So something just popped into my head. Like even thinking about be a man and like man up and stuff. I think,
Yeah.
on the adult side, of course, like those are statements that we hear, but we don't even realize how that starts in early childhood. Like that
Mm,
notion of not expressing emotions. Like so
yeah.
often I hear parents say to their children, stop crying before I give you something to cry about. And we don't understand how
Mm,
detrimental that can be to children who are simply just expressing emotion. Right. And so
yes.
I think even going back to childhood, like as parents, we can just be more supportive to our kids when they do express emotions. So let them know that
Wow.
expressing emotions is absolutely okay and that it's
Yeah.
functional. Otherwise, they're going to be instilled in them the idea that expressing emotions is dysfunctional. And they become those adults who feel like I have to man up and I can't show emotions. So we can dismantle that
Yeah.
in childhood.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, Dr. Chanda, even as as a kid growing up, man, it was like when you were crying, we were told we acting like a girl, man. So like, stop acting like a girl, like stop,
Yes.
be like that was the main thing that was told to us growing up as boys. If we showed emotion, we were basically acting like a girl. We were soft, we were weak, we weren't strong, and so and that didn't start with my parents. That's something that, like you said, has been passed on and I tried with
Hmm.
my children because I know what that did to me. I never have that issue. I mean, even now, like I'm serious. I'll be watching something if it make me emotional. I'm like trying to like man, I don't want to be looking weak in here and looking like crying, but I'm like man, like God gave us emotions,
Right.
and I think when you say that, I'm liking some of the comments. I don't know if you can you see them because
I
I like
can. I can see them on my phone.
what Jimison last name. We've been taught that showing emotion is threatening for women and weak for men.
Absolutely.
Wow,
Yeah. I love
that's
that
good.
comment.
Yeah, I love that because if you
So
remember,
often, yeah.
no, go.
No, so
What were you about to
often
say?
we tell, yeah, I was saying that like so often when we are expressing emotion, especially
Hmm.
Black women, we're
Yeah,
automatically demonized, automatically labeled as being aggressive or being
yes,
angry. And it's
yes,
like we don't have any room to really express how we're feeling and that turns into code switching in certain, rooms that we're in
wow,
because
yeah,
of the fact that, we don't want to be labeled as the angry Black lady or the one
yeah.
who's over dominant or and so I think that she actually has a point.
Yeah, that's good because that was the whole thing with our upcoming vice president elect. With the debate,
Yeah.
they were like, "Is she going to be too aggressive? Is she going to be the angry Black woman?" And so you said code switching. What's code switching?
Yeah, so listen, I was a victim of code switching way back in my early career. So feeling as
Okay.
though you have to change the way in which you speak, the way your mannerisms, even sometimes for
Mm,
Black women, our hair, right? When we're in certain
wow.
areas, when we're in certain meetings, when we're in the classroom. And so like
Wow.
for me, as like a young Black professor, like I started my professorship at the age of 25. So I was young,
Wow.
like fresh out of my master's program. And so I'm in a room of mostly white people in my classrooms, and a lot of them were older than me. So I always felt
Yeah.
like I had to change my mannerisms. I couldn't really wear
Mm.
my hair like I really wanted to, because otherwise they're not going to respect me or see me as an educated person. And so
Wow.
I recently got liberated from that. Like, y'all going to get the long nails, y'all going to get the long, if my braids was down, they're down to my knees. Hello. I speak the same way on Instagram Live as I do in my classroom, because at the end of the day, you're going to get all of me with all of my degrees, like, period. That doesn't dictate how educated I am. And it's literally white supremacy. So we have to work to
Yeah.
dismantle that.
Wow. You're getting all of me with the degrees, all that. You're getting all of this.
And the
But
nails.
nails, hair, I love that. That's so good to me. And you blessing a lot of people, man. If she blessing y'all, please let her know. I'm getting YouTube questions. Well, I got a question on YouTube. You said James Portion, Dr. Chanda, I have a hard time dealing with rejection and being ignored during the holidays. What would you say to Nikita Grubbs about that? She's watching it on YouTube right now, dealing with
Yeah. So first
rejection.
of all, Yeah. So first of all, I would say thank you for your vulnerability, because I know rejection is something that's so hard for many of us to experience. And it's even harder for a lot of us to talk about, because it's one of those emotions that, we don't like to feel. Um, because I am a Christian, I will encourage you to seek the Lord and ask him to reveal to you where that spirit came from. Because rejection is a spirit. Let's be clear. Like, rejection is a
Mm,
spirit. And we also want to make sure that, whatever it is, whatever door that was that opened up that spirit of rejection, like, we have to do things practically in order to shut it. Some of the things that we can
yeah.
do practically is to identify some of your own values. Like, what are some of the things that you see? Why do you see yourself as worthy? And I want you to, like, make a list
Mm,
out, because a lot of times when situations aren't as we want them to be, like if we are single and we don't want to be single, if we lost a job, oftentimes our vision gets jaded. Like, we only focus on the negative
mm,
stuff and not necessarily
yeah.
those things that makes us worthy and what makes us valuable. So I would encourage you to do that.
That's good. That's really, really good. Let me see. Let me get another one. A couple more. Dr. Shonda, you are a blessing. Yes, rejection is a
Thank you
spirit.
so much.
Absolutely. Listen, hey, that code switching blessing them.
Oh, I need to talk
Listen,
more about that. A lot of people don't know that
yeah,
about me.
that blessed me. That blessed me. But see, but let me say this. That's a thin line, because some of the things that people will say, this is just how I am. They'll
Hmm.
look at how you're addressing code switching, and there's some things about us that are just how we are, that aren't healthy, that could be
Hmm.
toxic. So how do you know, how do you be like, okay, this is just how I am, y'all gonna get this is just me, this is how I
Yeah.
am, I'm not changing it. But if you toxic, or if it's unhealthy, how
Hmm.
are people able to really be self-aware when it comes to that?
Yeah. 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 So code switching is more so with regard to, like, the ways in which you speak, like tone of voice, mannerisms, how you present
Mm,
yourself. But when it comes to toxic traits, like, if I know that I speak to people in a way that's disrespectful, or if I'm demeaning
hmm,
to other people, that's something that you need to address. That ain't code switching. You just have some things you need
yeah,
to work out in your heart. So,
yeah,
so it's a difference, and it's important to identify that. So, like, you shouldn't be violating other people's rights and their dignity and demeaning them. Like, you do need to
yeah,
switch that. We'll pray for
yeah.
you.
Yeah, that's good, Dr. Shonda. Anybody? A lot of it, yes, yes. No, thank y'all for tuning in. This is absolutely needed. This is exactly what I needed. Me too. Um, my pastor's in the building. I was just talking about my pastor in our church and what we're doing. Pastor Mike McClure Jr. is in the building. Pastor Mike in the building.
Hey,
Y'all show
Pastor
him some
Mike.
love. Rock City Church out here in Birmingham. Okay, so a lot of times people look at coping skills, different coping skills they have.
Mm,
Dr. Shonda, would you say that sometimes the coping skills that helped you survive one season of your life may be hurting you in the present season? Maybe it was
yes.
some things that you used to help you get through, some pain or something that you went through, but now you're kind of gotten addicted to those same coping skills that could be hurting you now with what you're going through. What would you say to somebody that's feeling like that?
Yeah. So I would say that whenever we go through certain seasons in life, there are going to be things that work in one area that don't work in another area, right? So oftentimes, because it was, something that was functional in a particular situation, that doesn't mean it's going to be functional like 5 years from now. So as we
Yeah.
grow, right? As we grow as human beings, our ability to cope with things should grow. So I'll use an example for anxiety. So a lot of times people might use, some sort of deep breathing coping mechanism in order to deal with anxiety, which is great.
Yeah.
But if you're using that same strategy in order to avoid anxiety and to avoid feeling certain emotions, that's when it could become detrimental. Right. And so I always tell my
Mm,
clients, like, whenever we're utilizing certain coping skills, it's important to recognize, is this keeping you from feeling the experience? Is this allowing you to really, grow in that area that you want to overcome? Or is it keeping you stuck in that same pattern?
that's so good. That's great. I think that's exactly what I need to hear. And I think this question here, I like this question. I put it right here for you. When setting boundaries with family, we talked about that earlier, but because we're talking about coping with the holidays. When setting boundaries
Hmm.
with family, how do you deal with being lonely as a result? Like, you know what, y'all toxic. Y'all are
Yeah.
healthy for my mental health. I'm cutting y'all off. But then you feel lonely, like, okay, but I miss my family. I miss those people.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes we can become codependent to toxicity as well. It's like we
Absolutely.
we we become codependent. So like once we lose that, then like she says, how do you deal with that when you're feeling lonely as a result of it?
Yeah. And so it's important to keep in mind that because they're my nuclear family doesn't mean that I don't have other family members. Right. So everybody
Mm,
has a nuclear family. So, like, we have most people have, like, grew up with a mom, dad, siblings, things of that nature. But let's keep in mind that there are also people that you may have at work that you might have established a familial relationship with. There are people in your neighborhood that you might have established a familial relationship with. And until God, either heals their hearts or sends you new, relationships, you can always develop your own family. Like, it doesn't necessarily just have to be your nuclear family. And I also
mm,
encourage you to, what you were saying, James, that was a great point. Sometimes we do get dependent on those toxic relationships. So it's important
yeah.
for us to understand what's drawing us back. Like, why are we being led back to
Mm.
toxicity if we're continuing to be hurt by it?
That's good, Dr. Chanda. This is a good question. I don't even know. Sheris Malone Davis says, I was diagnosed with conversion disorder. How do I cope with issues
Hmm.
better so I don't continue to have non-epileptic seizures?
That's a great question. And so I would encourage you to, hopefully you're seeing a specialist for it, and they'll have, like, all the coping strategies that you need there, because conversion disorder is very specific, and it's something related to, like, just neurological things and biological things. And because I don't know your entire case, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to provide you with advice on that. But Sharice, I'm definitely praying for you, and I'm just going to encourage you to ask your provider. And if you don't have one, you can always download Minds of the Culture, and I have a list of Black psychologists and therapists there who can assist you.
Yes, yes. Don't forget y'all download. Yeah, that app, Minds for the Culture.
Minds of the Culture.
Minds of the Culture. I love that part, but there's a list of Black therapists and that you can look at. So make sure y'all download that. Let me see. Okay, let's see. Here's one from YouTube. What do you do when it feels as if everyone is pulling from you? I've been so drained lately trying to help everyone through whatever it is they're dealing with. I've been guilty of that, but then again, they don't listen.
Mhm.
What do you do when you're being pulled on?
Yeah, man, that's one of those tough questions, and it goes back to what we discussed earlier in the conversation. So when you feel like people are pulling you, you're constantly pouring out. That's most likely a product of the boundaries that you set with them. So, like, either they weren't
Mm.
firmly established or they keep pushing on them. And so what I would encourage you to do is set those boundaries and stick to them. So, like, me personally, I have my phone on do not disturb at certain hours. Like, some phone calls I just don't take, some text messages I don't answer if I don't have the emotional capacity. Therefore,
Yeah,
I lately I just
that's
don't know
good.
what it feels like to feel pulled in so many directions because I'm setting those boundaries. So I would encourage you to do the same.
And I love that what you said because sometimes it's like you'll see a name pop up. It's like I don't even have the energy for that conversation. I already know.
Nope.
I already know what it's about to do to my. It's about to pull on me, and I'm not in that
Uh-uh.
place right now to even take this call. Yeah,
Right.
I
Damp my
love it, man.
spirit.
Listen,
No.
yeah, you are blessing so many people, y'all. You got to make sure you
I love
download
it.
Mind of the Culture. What you are doing for our community, what you're doing for the faith-based community, for the Black community, for the culture, is such a blessing. You have my full support, man. I've known you for a while, and just to see what God is doing through your life. I mean, it started with what's the first app I downloaded? You and your
Double
sister,
portion.
Double Portion. She has a twin sister, y'all. So it's Double Portion. I ain't got no alert from Double Portion in a while. Is that still in
We
effect?
we still around. We just rebranding.
Oh, I got it. I got double portion, and now Minds of the Culture is absolutely amazing. Make sure you follow them. I know it's on Instagram and the app. Is it on Facebook as well?
Yes, it is. So you guys can like that page.
Minds of the Culture. I promise you, it's going to bless him.
Yes.
It's going to be a bless to you. Yes, it is an app, Tanya. It's the app, Minds of the Culture. That's all I had to put in the search to find the app, right? I mean, that's what I did.
Yep. So on Google Play and Apple.
It's on Apple in the App Store, also on Google Play as well. I want to
Yep.
thank you. We're definitely going to be doing this more often. We wanted to give you just some information during this holiday season. This is a different one than we've ever experienced. It's always stress. It can always be stressful, but I think this year it's been just a little bit more stressful for a lot of us. Even talking to my kids, doing at home school. It's just different for them. And so a lot of us even, I
Yeah.
think that's a question we can leave with is, talking to our kids, like how should, speaking to them during this time. What are some of the things that maybe we should
Mhm.
remind them of, or maybe some of the things that we can do while we're locked in? We're not going out and seeing family. They're
Mhm.
not seeing their cousins, playing with their cut like usual. What's something to make sure that maybe we kind of give to our children during this holiday season?
Yeah. So I would say, kids nowadays, Gen Z and younger, like they want the truth. So I would encourage you to really be as truthful and honest with them as possible. And
Mm,
they'll also, I would just encourage you to make sure that you are providing them with a space to express their emotions, to
yeah,
express, their sadness related to not being able to see friends or to be around grandmom or whatever during the holiday
yeah,
season, because that does wear on children. And so,
yeah,
again, like I want you to establish a place where they feel safe. And also, we were talking about establishing like those places or those different scenarios where you can still have fun and still do things. So in your immediate family, be creative. Like you can have game nights. You can play
mm,
Monopoly. You can, there's different. You guys can have a talent show. That would be so
yeah,
entertaining. I would love to see a Fortune family talent show from y'all.
right,
But that's
right,
just some
right.
of the
Do
things you can do with kids. Yeah.
that is so good, y'all. It's Dr. Chanda. She is absolutely amazing. God is going to do something so incredible through your life. He already is, but this is just the beginning. He's just getting warmed up. Once again, we salute you. We celebrate you. I love what you're doing. And I look forward to our next conversation. We're going to continue to do this. People are saying, please save the live. I promise you it's going to be on here. I'm not deleting this. We need this. This is something that we need, and we'll continue to do it. But make sure you're following her. She's always giving great information on Minds of the Culture as well. Sis, I love you so much, man. You and your
Love you
family
too.
mean so much to me. I appreciate you for doing this, and we'll continue to do it because it's what we need. God bless y'all. We love
Period.
y'all so much. Have a good evening.